Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to be talking about this video with Peter Boghossian where he gets interrupted while doing I guess you could call it like an experiment on the street with strangers. He's not really on the street, though. He's in the middle of a university um, plaza or something like that. And some of you may have actually seen this video already. It's kind of old. It's from 3 years ago. But I recently went on a trip with some friends of mine, and we had some interesting conversations. I'm a bit older. I'm 31 years old. One of these guys was 20. The other one was 19. This is my cousin and his friend from school. And while we were heading out, I figured that it'd be kind of cool to have conversations with this girl that was on the trip with us because she is definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum from me politically. Maybe not even necessarily opposite because there's a lot of things that we agreed on. However, what we kind of got into was basically talking about issues within the Black community, and then later on we started having a conversation about trans community and the differences that we have there and what we're willing to do and not do in regards to this. So I think it's very interesting because the sign that Peter Boghossian has set up right now just says that there are two genders. And as you'll see, he gets interrupted by some hecklers on top of this building who are kind of just talking shit and flipping him off. And so he kind of calls him out and is like, why don't you come down here and have a conversation? And it's funny, man, because seeing the arguments and the talking points that they have is very similar to my friend that I was talking to. And what I find fascinating is that people just really don't want to accept the fact that there are people who will never agree that there are multiple genders or that you can choose your gender. And the arguments that they have are really shitty. And on top of that, you can see that people are kind of disagreeing with him without really having a good rebuttal to anything that he's saying. They just kind of go on this emotional kind of like soapbox where they're just talking about how, trans people are so uncomfortable by you having this conversation, and don't you know like the harm that you're doing to them and blah, blah, blah. Well, this is happening on a university campus. This is where these conversations are supposed to be happening because these conversations are being had in society. And the people that are coming out of universities are the future leaders of our nation in all aspects, not just, in politics or whatever, but in the fields that they're going into, and some of these might not matter. I mean, if you're being an engineer, who gives a shit about gender ideology or whatever? But whenever it comes to social work, which is the building that he's standing in front of, apparently, so the social work building, these things matter. And it's going to influence the way that we handle certain situations that are going to pop up in society in the future. So this is where these conversations should be being had to begin with. But anyway, I've given a little bit too long of an introduction. Let's go ahead and get into this video.
What would it take for you to move, not all the way over there, just one line, just one line?
I guess if they told me how many genders specifically there were, I can't think of anything that would change my opinion, I guess. But
You got some friends?
Oh, you're giving me the finger? Hi. I'm standing in front of the social work building. I'm harming individuals by asking that question. Well, you want to come down and have a conversation about it? Why do you want to come down and have a conversation? Oh. Okay, so what would it take for you to move to the strongly agree?
In this man's class, after a long, controversial 10 weeks of lectures in this giant auditorium, on the final day, he posed a question to the students. He says, if anybody has disagreed with anything I've said over the last 10 weeks, come down and sit in this chair in a spotlight in the middle of the auditorium. Here's a platform. Tell me to my face. Which I'm glad. I was the only one who walked down, and you gave me an A.
See, okay, that right there, I love that, because that just goes to show you that Peter Boghossian is actually interested in the conversation. Okay, he's not a teacher that's just trying to push propaganda or trying to frame people's minds to think a certain way. He's allowing people to engage with his class in a way that they can bring some kind of nuance to the class. So that guy coming up and saying something that he disagrees with could completely change the way that somebody interpreted that class. Even though it's at the end, just one thought can completely change their view on things. So I think it just goes to show that Peter Boghossian is actually a good faith actor when he is doing these experiments. Whether he agrees with them or not, there may be things that he doesn't agree with that are being presented, like these ideas. I don't know that if Peter Boghossian believes that there's only two genders or not. He just knows that this is a hot topic in society at this time, So then now these people are coming down here to disrupt him, and this is where we start getting to the shitty arguments.
Excuse me. Hi, I'm so curious about what's happening out here.
Oh, it's a critical thinking game where we take a look at claims and you step on a line you want to play.
Well,
You want to watch the game played?
well, we were watching from up there actually because we happened to see the sign from up in the School of Social Work, which is on the 6th floor, and some of our trans students saw the statement. There are only two genders.
Well, thanks for coming down to talk.
It was pretty activating and upsetting not knowing the context. We thought it was sort of a statement that was being made, but not a thought exercise necessarily.
Would you like to see how the game is played?
No. I think we understand
Is it something that
yeah.
should be?
Okay, so see, that right there just goes to show you that they don't give a shit, even after coming to understand the context of what's happening. Like, they don't care, because they already have a mindset of who he is and what he's about, and that he's there just to cause trouble, just because he disagrees with them.
Be a game, though?
An exercise? You want to use defund the police as one?
Well, just thinking about what it looks like.
Yeah.
What does it look like
To the
see
whole
like
community.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white men with a sign that says there's only two genders? You could have been like the Westboro Baptist Church for all.
What is white? Why did you identify us on the basis of our race?
Well, are you the best people to be hosting that dialogue about?
No, but you.
Be representative of that community.
Okay, but I asked you a question. Why did you identify me and these people on the basis of their
Back to
race?
what it looks like, right? Kind of like that activating, triggering.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He has like a really shitty fucking argument. Oh, you're white. White men out here talking about trans people. Race has nothing to do with gender ideology.
Aspect of it all.
So you think that it's morally acceptable to identify people on the basis of their race?
It's not a moral question. It's a matter of like the fact
It's
that
just
those
about power and
identities
privilege.
exist.
Yeah. And
No, it is a moral question, actually, because he doesn't think that it's immoral because he thinks that white people are pieces of shit universally. Probably. If you were to flip this and say, okay, there's a handful of black people on the street and you think something negatively about what they're doing, that would be immoral. You shouldn't judge somebody on what they're talking about or allow somebody to speak about something or not allow somebody to speak on something based on their physical characteristics that they can't change. That has nothing to do with the conversation at all, or any conversation for that matter.
and identity and representation, right? So if you had a bunch of queer folks out here asking those kinds of questions, and there was
Well, how do you know we're not queer?
That's true. I don't know, but there's not sort of a representative, holistic, inclusive feeling, especially from up on high. We're looking down and we see this statement being made. We're curious about it. We're also just worried about the harm being done to passersby.
What is
See
the
that
harm?
statement.
So there are
What's
people
the
who
harm?
people who went home because it was so
Yeah,
triggering and
we had
activating.
some students.
So I
had to
think
leave.
the end result is
You know you're on film, right?
that is totally fine.
Okay.
There are real people who are really hurt by the statement. So I think
What were
it's
they
important
hurt
to
about?
Question that. Because that's not how they identify, and so it seems like a really triggering statement to just say there are two genders if that's not been your experience. So it's very harmful and very hurtful, and there's human lives that were affected, so I think that's the message.
What if it is his experience that there's only two genders? You're allowed to disagree with trans people. You're allowed to do that. You shouldn't. If you're a trans person and you're planning on going to college, you're in college, you should expect to run into these conversations. If you're a student of any gender or any race, you should be prepared to have hard discussions on things that have happened in history, in society, and things that are happening now that will shape the outcomes of the future of society. This is a very new thing in the grand scheme of human history and human society. This is pretty new. And for me, this kind of came out of nowhere. I remember back in like 2014, when I first started getting into politics and started getting into YouTube and stuff like that. I'd never heard of this before, and neither had anybody else ever. Maybe a few avant-garde douchebags in universities knew about gender ideology, but this was not a mainstream concept, you know? So this is something that's going to be talked about. We shouldn't just say, oh, well, this has the potential to hurt somebody's feelings. Are we not going to talk about other subjects that might hurt people's feelings? What about something like slavery? Should we avoid the topic of slavery because it might hurt black people's feelings while they're sitting in class? No, we've never done that. We literally teach about slavery to children, like in middle school. You know what I'm saying? So I find it funny. You know, you're putting yourself in this situation to go somewhere to gain a higher education, but you're not willing to talk about shit that matters in these universities. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't know. I think it's odd that people aren't willing to have these conversations. I am a very blunt person and am very willing to speak my mind. Anybody that knows me personally can attest to this. So I've just always kind of found it weird that, you know, just trans people can't even be presented with the idea that maybe what they believe about themselves is wrong.
So what we're trying to send is to maybe consider the questions that you're asking or posing before you begin your thought experiment.
Are you curious about like what we're bringing to you at all, or do you have?
I'm thinking about, I'm extremely curious and I'm extremely respectful. I genuinely respect the fact that you came as opposed to 7 or 8 of you giving me the middle finger and saying, fuck you to me. So yeah, so if,
What do you gain from this? Like, what is your reason that you just want to cause trouble, or like why are you here?
so
See, and there you go. Is like they can't even rationalize to themselves that he's literally just having a thought experiment and talking to people about this relatively new concept that we are having to deal with in society. They just want him to just blanket accept the fact that this exists and that it's true and that it will always be true, and that if you don't agree with their mindset or their framework, then you're a bigot and you're a piece of shit and you don't deserve to talk about these things in public. God, I can't stand shit like this.
I'm fascinated. I do street epistemology, and I'm fascinated if the people. Epistemology is from the Greek, basically how you know what you think. Okay, so street epistemology is taking it out of the university and bringing it into the street. So I'm very curious. Okay, a sidewalk or a.
This is like 20-year-old.
This isn't street epistemology.
You're doing this on the
Okay, if you don't like the word.
Again, this is such a nitpicky, stupid fucking argument. Like, okay, you're not on the street. He's fucking 100 feet away from the street. Who gives a shit?
Street, you can call it plaza epistemology, whatever. But the idea is you take it out of the university and you see if the reasons that people have for things justify their confidence
She's also one of the cowards that was up there flipping him off.
in it. So this is a confidence scale. We can do this with any claim you want. We can do this with a mayor of the city. We can do this with should the United States be funding Ukraine? I think it's $800 billion. Should the United States, is it more important to control inflation or employment? And we put people on a spectrum. They start on, let me just explain again. So you asked, so I'll tell you. So what am I going to do?
I think what we're just saying is and I think those questions are thought-provoking and important questions to ask folks in our community. I think what we were struck by was the statement on the board that it wasn't a question and that there was no context clues for folks, especially trans folks, to know that this was not your belief, but this is more of a thought experiment.
Okay, would you be more comfortable if it was a question? Like if I put a question mark?
Sure.
Okay, I'm more than happy to put a question at the end.
A question is a question and not a statement.
More than happy to.
Some type of warning or a statement of like what you're doing on another board so people can walk by and like try and understand that. Because from afar it looks,
This is a thought experiment.
yeah,
This is
what we're asking people.
I'm more than happy to do that.
And then that way it can kind of,
I'm more than happy to do that. I only have one board, but I'm more than happy to put on this is a thought experiment and put a question mark. If I put a question mark, I could. I don't know. I'm worried that people wouldn't be able to see it. But I'm more than happy to, if I put a question mark at the end and then I put another one, it's not really, it is a thought experiment, but it's more of an exercise / game starts thought experiment. If I put that on the end, would all of the concern vaporize?
No.
No, probably not, because we're talking about real humans with their lived experience.
See, exactly. They're trying to control the conversation. And really what they're doing is they don't give a fuck about him changing his sign or making it obvious that this is a thought experiment. What they care about is shutting him down and not even allowing him to speak about this and potentially change somebody's mind, or just have somebody actually engage and think about it for themselves.
Experience and their positionality, their identities, and sort of I might have a very different personal feeling walking by because it doesn't target my identity specifically. So we're just sort of here to sort of advocate and elevate who might be harmed by a statement like
What do you mean by harmed?
harmed?
Yeah.
Well, people who have been like historically and currently oppressed, right, by dominant systems, patriarchy, whiteness, masculinity, all of the systems that harm people who don't fit within those sort of more rigid.
That's why you want a question and not a statement.
can I also ask like,
Now, I just want an answer. That's why you want a question, not a statement?
I think a question is an invitation, right?
More than happy to make it a question.
Participate in this conversation. It's
More than happy to do that.
You're representing, with your identity, a belief, perhaps especially when it's a statement. And so what it looks like is you're out here saying there are two genders. And then anyone who doesn't fall within those two sort of binary boxes.
I'm more than happy to do that.
That's where the harm comes from.
More than happy to say this is a thought experiment. No, let me just finish. More than happy to do that. But it seems that if I did that, that would not be enough.
But you might have.
But then I
might not be the person to, again, I think asking folks who hold those identities, sort of if that is enough. So asking queer students, asking trans students, asking gay students, if you're asking about race or poverty or religion, or people who are part of those groups can really inform you better than I can.
You wanted to say, I wanted to hear her through.
No, I get it. And I'm just wondering, like, are any of you all like trained professionals in trauma-informed care? Like, if a transgender individual were to come to the space and participate, and then there was a triggering response where they needed emotional support, like, are you ready to support?
No, because that doesn't exist for fucking anybody, anywhere, in any fucking conversation. That is such a stupid ass line of reasoning from this lady. Like, no, dude, nobody fucking has that. That, like, trans people are not this special fucking class of society that get to be treated differently and have their asses wiped just because they can't handle people having hard conversations that revolve around their fucking identity. It's fucking insanity.
That because this conversation can bring up a lot of emotions, and the people that are kind of working within it could be really triggered. But if no one's there as like an advocate or support, it could be pretty detrimental to the community you're asking. So I just want to like frame that if you're not having like an advocate there as someone that can like be an emotional support or regulation for the people that are potentially harmed or triggered in this conversation, whether they're participating or not, like that's a potential thing to think about and could be a flaw in the system, because you need to have someone to be able to support that emotionally, mentally, and for people's trauma. So if you're not, it's kind of like these people might leave and feel like without any support or any understanding of what they just went through. So
yeah,
just to think that.
And we know people who are in the gender minority experience higher rates of suicidal ideation, higher rates of anxiety and depression, and like they're seeing messages like this all throughout their lives. And so campus is supposed to be a safe space where everyone can exist freely in their own identities and who they are and be learning and be talking about these really, really important things within our culture and society. And by walking through this community member that we care about that should be in class today, learning about how to take care of their community and how to support marginalized individuals like themselves and others can't participate.
Okay, well, that's on them. They are not going to be able to function in society if they cannot handle having a conversation that goes against something that they believe, even if it's about themselves and their identity. Okay? These conversations should not be held hostage because trans people are going to fucking off themselves. That alone is enough for me to question everything that revolves around gender ideology. We used to look at the issues with trans people as something that was a mental health disorder. You have gender dysphoria, where people think that they are the opposite gender whenever they're not. And for some reason, Western society has gotten to the point where we have decided to just absolutely allow these fucking delusions that people have over themselves to just flourish. Instead of being real and being honest and saying, no, you can't just be whatever the fuck you want to be. You are what you are, and that's okay. It's okay that you are what you are. We can help you figure that out. Gender dysphoria is like the only mental health disorder that I know of where you actually promote the things that these people are dealing with. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't validate delusions that people with schizophrenia have. You know what I'm saying? And maybe, you know, this is my ignorance because I don't know that much about gender dysphoria or whatever, but I am a student right now. I'm studying psychology, so these are one of the things I'm going to be getting into. But I just, from where I'm at as a layman, like, I don't see it. And I don't think that we need to be so fucking, like, afraid of talking about these things because trans people are just going to fucking kill themselves.
Participate today because they saw that message. And that's what we mean by harm. And honestly, I don't even think adding a question mark is enough. I think it should be more of what is your perspective on gender identity? Because then you're opening up the question, or gender in general, right? Because we know that it's not just about identity, it's about who that person is. And by really framing it in the binary, that's where there's harm.
Can I put in like my 2 cents as a non-binary person?
Please.
Cool. I'm just
That is fucking made up. Just saying. Non-binary is the most retarded shit I've ever heard of.
gender non-conforming. I use they, them pronouns. Do you know what that means?
I believe so, yes.
Are you aware of like the theory of social constructionism?
Yes.
So
I'm a gender studies scholar.
Yeah, so I'm much younger than you. These are all, this is all very new, I understand. Like, my parents are boomers, they're in their 60s, they've had a really hard time understanding. So I've had to explain this to a lot of people.
She is unbelievably condescending and fucking arrogant.
In your generation, so you're aware of social constructionism, you're aware of gender as a social construct, when you say there are only two genders, those two genders are just social constructs that we made up. From birth, you are assigned a male at birth because you have a penis, I'm assuming. You present as male, do you identify as male?
Are you asking if I identify as male?
What's your gender?
I identify as male.
Because you were assigned a male at birth. Are you cis?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you're going with this. I'm trying to understand where you're going.
That the idea of there being only two genders is a social construct because we have this idea of being assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Now, I'm non-binary. That's something that I have learned about myself over the last 6-7 years. After I was a teenager, I learned about sociology. I learned about gender as a social construct. And I realized that I don't fit into the box of just a cis woman. Okay, my gender is completely whatever I feel like in the moment. I'm not just one solid thing. Sexuality, gender, these are all social constructs that we've created within our society, our binary society, where we've decided there's only male or female. So many people don't fit into that. And like, why do you feel like you're a man? Because you've been socialized to believe these things are associated with being a man. These things are associated with being a woman. There's only two boxes. But you don't have to conform to that. That's just what society has told you from birth. Someone said, a doctor said, this person has a penis. I'm going to assume that they have to be a man and fit into this box their whole life. But why? That's just.
I would love to hear other voices if you wanted to say something.
Engaging in this debate feels useful.
Do you feel that this is a debate?
That's your response? When you say, I want to hear from everyone else.
No, I do want to.
I didn't actually care to hear what you
No, I listened and I'm processing.
Whatever the fuck she was talking about doesn't matter. If everything is a social construct and nothing has any meaning to it whatsoever. Gender isn't even something that you're supposed to be using to identify yourself. Gender is something that you use to identify other people in the stages of their life. Like a man. A man is an adult human male. A woman is an adult human female. A boy is an adolescent male. A girl is an adolescent female. That's it. That's for you to be able to identify other people. Where this notion of using your gender as a way to identify yourself is fucking silly because it's something that you use to identify other people. And that's how it's been used since these terms have been fucking created. Up until now. Now it can be whatever you want it to be and nothing has meaning.
Would you like me to engage her?
I want to hear from
You want to hear from him?
No, I want to hear from her.
Okay. Do you have anything to say?
I actually don't want to hear.
No, I'm.
I just want to make sure. So this is what I want. I don't want the reason that I'm more than happy to engage you. The reason that I said that is you have how many people here? 15, I'm guessing. No, but let me finish. The reason I said that is because I don't want you to walk away and someone to say, you didn't give me a chance to talk. So I didn't give her a chance to talk before, but that's only because I was listening to what you were going to say. And I realized that the classes here aren't a lot of time. And the reason that I switched from what she had, and I'm more than happy to listen to her, is because I don't want people.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? They just told you their pronouns and their lived experience.
Okay, then okay, so instead of getting.
The experience of someone that doesn't conform to what I.
Okay, so this individual just told me that, and I'm trying to be reasonable, and I think it's better to have a conversation than for you guys to give me the finger and yell "fuck you." So you wanted to say something? Go ahead.
It's already been you.
Aren't you the guy that made up a bunch of academic data and submitted it
to address that she did, like just address you just
Dude,
called
shut
this
the
person.
fuck up.
Okay.
And they just told you their gender was.
Okay, well, I apologize, and I say they.
That's the harm being done that we were talking about.
Do you accept my apology? Okay.
That is such a fucking weird thing to throw on somebody. Like, only in these spaces are people so worried about dumb shit like this. Like, you were talking about how this is a new concept. This is not something that our society has adopted whatsoever. Calling somebody with the wrong fucking grammar, they, them, or I don't even know if it's necessarily grammar, but calling somebody by something that is not normal is not something that should be expected, and you shouldn't shame people whenever they clearly look at a woman who looks like a woman in every fucking way that she is expressing herself. She looks like a woman. She sounds like a woman. She dresses like a woman. She has the stature of a woman. She has the presence of a woman. He's going to call her she because that's what she fucking is.
Generation, it's a generational, education. If you
Okay, so
and want to change and learn, that's great. I love that, and I accept your apology.
so isn't it better to have a conversation about this than to scream at someone from the rooftop?
Oh, I don't know who. I certainly didn't scream at you from the rooftop. Did any of you guys scream?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
So you guys were screaming and yelling "fuck you" to me and giving me the finger.
We were just saying, please go away. You're not welcome.
No, I said fuck you.
Okay. Okay. So
Can I just?
In a conversation.
My goal is to disrupt this. I
no.
don't want any more harm to
So
Yeah.
okay. So I understand that you believe I can't remember where that over there she moved, but I understand that you believe this stuff. And we live in a democracy and other people don't have those beliefs. And I want to ask people if the reasons they have for their beliefs are justified. And this is that experiment.
And your thought experiment, we actually have to go. We're not part of the thought experiment. We're all social workers and we saw this harm being done and we just wanted to come here with curiosity and also
No, you didn't. No, they didn't. They came down there to disrupt it, which is what they were talking about whenever they were up on the roof. They said that their goal was to disrupt the conversation that he is having in his thought experiment. And that's kind of what they've done, but they're still participating in it. They're just too fucking stupid to see that.
some information.
And do you feel that you've spoken? Do you feel that if anybody else has something to say that you haven't had an opportunity to speak?
Do you feel like you've learned anything or taken?
But that doesn't answer my question. I just asked if anybody else would like to speak. If you'd like to speak, I'm standing here.
I think we're ready
Okay.
to wrap up, but I think to Joel's point, we hope that this was informative and helpful, and sorry if saying fuck you hurt your feelings. And
No, it didn't hurt my feelings.
good, I'm glad, because our student who was hurt, we're worried about them and potentially many, many others. And so that's why we came down to talk to you, just because we have a personal connection.
Well, I'm glad. Isn't it better to have a conversation with someone than to?
Yes.
I mean, isn't that what the whole enterprise should be about?
It's not safe for everybody to have that conversation.
Sometimes it's hard to just have a simple
It's not safe.
conversation.
Imagine you're dealing with social workers that are willing to look at somebody and just say, fuck you, and give them the middle finger. It's fucking silly. I'm not even going to finish the rest of this. I don't even want to hear what the rest of these people have to say because it's pretty much gotten to the end anyway. So, yeah, it's a little long-winded, and I think that most of my videos are probably going to be longer. For me personally, I like this kind of format where I'm kind of just reviewing a video and kind of just, kind of speaking off the cuff. I want to make sure that whenever I do videos that there is context. So that's why it's going to be a little bit longer. I don't want to be a channel that just barely says anything and plays a video. It is basically using other people's content and just reposting it and saying, like a couple things here and there just to be able to get views, So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to end it here. I hope that you guys found this informative and entertaining. If you have anything that you'd like to share about the video or anything like that, feel free to post something in the comments. But other than that, thank you for giving me your time, and we'll see you in the next one.